like you. Be strong to hold the powers of the sun. To dream, believe in strength. Now I'm the only one.
Today, we're going to revisit Episode 1, the beginning of a journey that feels less like the start of a show and more like the opening chapter of a story written only by two people who have known each other for years yet still manage to surprise us. This episode doesn't simply introduce a vacation. It opens a door into a private world built by Jimin and Jungkook, a world so intimate and natural that we often forget cameras are present at all. So let's start from the moment everything began, with something small, quiet, and unexpectedly meaningful. The episode opens with Jungkook heading to Jimin's apartment to surprise him. The staff had already messaged both of them, but Jimin didn't reply because he had fallen asleep, something Jungkook would hardly be shocked by. Yet when he arrived at Jimin's front door, the first thing he did was try to enter the password. And it didn't work. He tried again. Still wrong. Even the fingerprint sensor didn't recognize him. Viewers immediately reacted with theories, questions, speculations, and jokes. Why didn't Jungkook know the password? Had something changed? Were they not as close anymore? But before any of those theories could take root, the episode itself gave us the answer. To enter, Jungkook didn't hesitate to call someone who would only share a password if the trust was unquestionable, Jimin's mother. She gave him the correct code without hesitation, without questioning why he needed it, and without a second thought. That alone says more about the nature of their relationship than anything else could. Trust like that doesn't form overnight. It is built over years and extends beyond just the two of them. And the idea that Jungkook didn't know the password because they weren't close simply has no basis. In the Permission to Dance documentary, Jungkook walked into Jimin's apartment effortlessly, entering the code like it was second nature. But things have changed recently. Jimin has been a victim of harassment by a high-profile figure in the fandom, forcing him to take extra security measures. He has had to change his password frequently, especially because he thought they would be traveling the night before. This wasn't about distance, it was about safety. When Jungkook finally stepped inside, he found something that reminded everyone just how naturally they exist together. Jimin was still asleep. And not just asleep, completely naked. Jungkook warned him that cameras were about to enter, and Jimin, half-conscious, mumbled, "I'm naked." To which Jungkook replied with the most casual tone possible, "You're always naked." The way he said it. The way Jimin didn't panic. The way it felt like this was simply normal. That tiny moment left the fandom frozen because nothing about it felt scripted. It was pure, unfiltered familiarity, two people who have clearly shared enough daily life that nothing surprises them anymore. After Jimin got dressed and packed his bag, they set off on their journey. Inside the car, Jungkook became fascinated by the camera setup used for filming and announced that he wanted one. Jimin asked when he planned to use it, and Jungkook answered, "Someday." Jimin laughed and said that in a year he'd probably ask again, and Jungkook would eventually end up with it. And of course, now Jungkook is indeed using that model on his gaming streams. It's such a small detail, yet it reveals so much about how they influence each other. Their first stop was a guest house near Incheon Airport. Jungkook, ever attentive, opened the door for Jimin, while Jimin walked in carrying Mochi with his usual soft politeness. They played around, teased each other, laughed together, behaving exactly the way close friends or partners do when they're in their most natural state. During dinner, they found a cake decorated with their initials. They took photos together, laughed over it, and later cleaned up the table side by side, as if it was just another quiet evening at home. Watching them wash dishes together felt oddly intimate, like we were watching something we weren't supposed to, an unguarded glimpse of what they're like when the world isn't watching. Then came the nighttime games. Depending on how many questions they answered correctly, they would earn clues about their trip. The first challenge was to identify countries from their flags. Jimin took the lead, while Jungkook, naturally, hovered behind him trying to help without giving outright answers. When Jimin confidently said Russia instead of France, Jungkook's shocked face and Jimin's embarrassed laugh became one of the funniest moments of the entire episode. It was their chemistry, playful, light, instinctive, that made the scene unforgettable. But the highlight came when they had to guess their final destination. Jimin, with that uncanny intuition he always seems to have when it concerns Jungkook, answered, Switzerland. Jungkook immediately reached out, grabbed his hand, and said, "You're incredible." The proud tone in his voice, the warmth in his eyes, and the way Jimin smiled while trying to hide his embarrassment made the entire moment feel soft and unusually tender. Jungkook looked like he could barely stop himself from pulling Jimin into a hug. Afterward, staff handed them small suitcases to repack their belongings. Jungkook jokingly asked why they were told to pack at home if they would be given tiny suitcases anyway. They laughed, teased each other, and then Jimin dropped that gentle nickname, "My baby." Jungkook looked up and asked, "Is he your baby?" It was playful, but there was something intimate in the way he said it, like a line they've repeated off-camera many times before. They then talked about their military experience. Jimin explained the KCTC training exercise where they couldn't shower for days. He described how dirty he felt and how desperately he washed himself when finally able to shower. Jungkook listened closely, his eyes soft. Jimin said that during that moment, it felt like the world disappeared and only the two of them existed, looking at each other. It was unexpectedly romantic, one of those confessions that slips out when someone feels safe enough to be vulnerable. The next morning, their official journey to Switzerland began. On the way to the airport, Jungkook suddenly reached out and held Jimin's hand, wishing him a pleasant trip. He didn't let go immediately. It was a simple gesture, but the kind of simplicity that says more than words. A moment of reassurance, comfort, and affection. Once in Switzerland, they rode through breathtaking landscapes, making small comments in awe of the scenery. They had a warm meal together and toasted to their trip, a quiet moment that felt like a celebration of friendship, trust, and something softer that has been growing between them for years. They went grocery shopping, played games at their Airbnb, and fell into that familiar rhythm of teasing, laughing, brushing fingers against each other, and exchanging subtle glances. Jimin repeatedly said he was terrible at games, while Jungkook tried to comfort him in his own adorable way. They kept apologizing for forgetting names, but the joy wasn't in winning, it was in playing together. The next morning, Jimin ran after a staff member, and Jungkook laughed uncontrollably behind him. It was such a simple moment, yet it perfectly captured who they are when they're together, carefree, joyful, genuine. And that's how episode 1 ends, filled with laughter, soft touches, quiet confessions, small acts of affection, and moments that feel like glimpses into a relationship built on trust, comfort, and years of shared memories. Tell me, what did you think about episode 1? Which moment stayed with you the most? I'm reading all of your thoughts. And to all my beloved Jikookas, thank you for always leaving comments filled with love, warmth, and respect for Jimin and Jungkook. You make this space feel even more beautiful.